So it's got to be incredibly disappointing that, of course, we are in Tier 3. But it's probably not surprising, because if you look, our infection rates are still high. Our hospitals are under intense pressure. And so it's understandable, the decision that the government has made. But I would also say they've been clear that this will be reviewed in 2 weeks' time. And we've all got to do all we can to make sure that the downward direction in our numbers now is sustained and we can get down a tier in the future.
OK, so you're saying it's understandable, but there will be some people in our region. I'm particularly looking at those perhaps in places like Coventry, for whom this will be a massive shock. I mean, their numbers are not as high as those perhaps in Dudley and in Sandwell. That's going to be a big deal for them, isn't it?
Yes, if you take it to the individual authorities, there are some surprises. I thought that Coventry would probably be in level 2. Indeed, I've had discussions to encourage that. But what's now clear is the government have taken huge areas of the country together. So all of the urban West Midlands, Warwickshire, indeed on the other side of Coventry into Leicestershire. So it's clear they've taken much bigger blocks as one. So although brilliant progress is being made in Coventry, I suspect that is the government's thinking.
I mean, this will affect lots of us personally in terms of household mixing, but it's hospitality really, isn't it? And those for whom their livelihood is tied up in hospitality, they are going to really feel this. Essentially for them, the lockdown just kind of continues, doesn't it?
So you're right, for hospitality businesses, particularly at this time of year, this is incredibly tough. After a really difficult 9 months, there was obviously the hope that we would come to something better in the run-up to Christmas. So what we've got to do is all work together to minimise this period of Tier 3, but we've also, and I've got to continue to press the government for further support for hospitality, and particularly this issue of the monthly grant that businesses get. £3,000, particularly for medium and bigger business, is just not sufficient. So we'll continue, just as we did when we went into Tier 2 on the beginning of the autumn, to press the government for more.
Now, some of the areas that we're talking about were on the verge of going into Tier 3 before we entered this second national lockdown. We've had almost, or we will have had, a month by next week of national lockdown. You could perhaps forgive people for saying, what was all that about? I mean, we're basically back to where we were. Do you think that the national lockdown was warranted? Do you think it has worked and done its job?
Yes, I do. And the big difference, and why I'd say to people it has been worth it, is when we went into lockdown, areas of the West Midlands were, as you say, their rates of infection were going up. Hospital admissions were going up. We'd got more people in our hospitals. That has now changed. The graph has gone flat and is now falling in every one of our local authority areas. In some areas, it's actually falling pretty fast. So the direction of travel is different, and that's what's been achieved. And actually, hospital admissions, they've flattened off as well. Number of people in hospitals in the West Midlands looks to be maximising out. And if that can begin to fall, that's what gives us a chance of then coming down the tiers and having more hope as we go immediately to Christmas.
You did mention, though, pressure on hospitals, and we've heard a lot about that in the last few weeks from people right at the front line, saying that pressure is like never before, anxiety levels are like never before. I mean, with that in mind, can you give us an update on the Nightingale Hospital at the NEC? How close are we to needing to use that?
So it's a really important question in this, the pressure on hospitals, and the government put great weight on that in their decision. And that's why I do think this decision is understandable, because some of our hospitals in the West Midlands have been under incredible pressure, even greater than the pressure back in April. The good news is that is just beginning to top out and possibly even beginning to come down just a little. And in terms of the Nightingale Hospital, that is a decision for the NHS, and as yet there is no intention to open that hospital. They want to use the resources they've got in their existing hospitals, because with the one fixed set of staffing, of course, it is more efficient and effective in terms of treatment to concentrate on our existing hospitals. But the Nightingale is always there as a reserve if it absolutely has to be used.
Now, when we talk about tiers, we do talk about confusion. I mean, inevitably some does come in, and we do have something very particular coming up pretty soon, which is Christmas, and some slightly different rules around the days over Christmas. What a lot of us will want to know is those of us now in Tier 3, what does that mean for those rules over Christmas? What kind of impact does that have?
So there is a glimmer of hope here, a determination across the whole of the country to offer some relaxation at Christmas. So whatever tier we are in, the decision that 3 households can mix together at Christmas stands, irrespective of tier. So that's something for many families to look forward to. But the background of your tier still stands. So in our case, if we were still in Tier 3, yes, we'd be having that household mixing, but there wouldn't be any change to the other regulations going on. For example, hospitality would still be closed. And then after Christmas, we go back to the full tiering arrangement.
OK, so a glimmer of hope perhaps for some people. Andy Street, thank you very much.